This video is going to help you understand plagiarism a little bit better. This is not a video on how to cite sources. This is a video on when to cite sources in your writing. So first, let's talk about what is plagiarism. Plagiarism is when you use someone else's words, thoughts, or ideas without giving them credit or citing your source. You should never be passing off someone else's work as your own. When we are writing, there are two different types of plagiarism. There's what is called intentional plagiarism, and then there's accidental plagiarism. So let's look at the two different types and see which we might be doing as we're writing in this course. Intentional plagiarism is cheating. That's when you're copying down an entire document and presenting it as your own. You went online, you found something, you stole it, and you're just going to say, yeah, I didn't have time to write my paper. This is my paper. Another example of intentional plagiarism is when we cut and paste from works of others and you don't properly cite those authors. You go in, you find a couple websites and you find some information that works, you copy and paste and you put those exact words into your paper. That's intentional plagiarism. Another example is just stringing together quotes or ideas of others without connecting their work to your original work. Asserting ideas without acknowledging their sources, reproducing sentences written verbatim by others without properly quoting or attributing the work to them, or making only minor changes to words or phrasings of another's work without properly citing the authors. So intentional plagiarism is going in, finding something, copying, pasting it, changing just a couple words, changing just a couple phrases, maybe just trying to quickly put it into your own words and then not giving the proper citations or proper credit to the person who wrote it first. So those are examples of intentional plagiarism. We do see that in classrooms, but we don't see it as much as we see accidental plagiarism. And that's when you just have a misuse of your sources. That means you just weren't quite sure when you need to cite. And this is what I see the most of. So let's talk about accidental plagiarism. It happens when you really just have a lack of understanding of the conventions of citations and documentation. You might just not know when you need to cite things because you aren't using a verbatim quote from a site. You're not sure you need to actually cite it. You might include a lack of understanding of paraphrasing, not being clear about the parameters of common knowledge or the statute of limitations on the attribution of ideas. So you might not understand the difference between paraphrasing and summarizing, or even what paraphrasing is. Not being sure on when we need to quote common knowledge and when we don't. Accidental plagiarism could also be the result of writers not understanding the sanctity of which the American academics endow the concept of idea ownership. Accidental plagiarism can also be a result of ignorance or laziness, but is not the result of a desire to cheat. So these are ones whenever you are trying your best to write a good paper and you're finding sources, but you're not exactly sure when you need to cite things. So we're going to talk about that today. And you will see down here at the bottom that I've cited the source on where I've gotten these. So I have given credit, and so you need to give credit as well. So when we have direct quotes, and you're pulling a direct quote from an article or an essay, you cite it. That's great. You know you need to do that. But when you get to things like paraphrasing and summarizing, that's where things get a little questionable. And that's when I see students not providing the correct citations. So let's talk about paraphrasing. Paraphrasing is when you rephrase a piece of text into your own words. Paraphrasing without citation is the most common type of plagiarism that we see in college essays. So you can paraphrase things. You can take part or a portion of something and you can paraphrase that and use that. That's fine. But you have to cite where you got the original information. You can't just paraphrase it and then claim that you wrote it on your own. You're paraphrasing something else someone has written. So paraphrasing becomes plagiarism when you read a source and then you rewrite those key points from that source and then you don't give credit for that. You can't claim it as your own. So if you're going to look at something and put it into your own words, then you are paraphrasing and you need to give credit to that. Summarizing is a technique that we use when we're writing that sometimes leads to accidental plagiarism. as you read through multiple things and you're summarizing stuff, or you want to put a paragraph or a page or even a whole essay into your own words, you can do that. However, you need to make sure that you're giving proper citation. So if you think you're summarizing and you find yourself only changing a word here or there of someone's writing, or you're just tinkering with the text in hopes of kind of making it sound like you wrote it, then you're really just asking for trouble. What you're going to end up with is not a word for word copying of what they said, but you're just stealing their ideas, their thoughts, and their formulations of that person who wrote that. And that's plagiarism, guys. So you need to make sure that you're not doing that. If you're going to put things into your own words and change a few words here and there, change some paraphrasings, make sure you go back and you properly cite that person. Common knowledge also is something that you need to be aware of what it is and when you need to provide a citation. Common knowledge constitutes simple factual information or common expressions that we all kind of know, and they're not going to be subject to plagiarism restrictions because we all know them. A complex idea, an analysis, an opinion, or an interpretation are not common knowledge, so those are subject to being cited. You need to make sure you're citing those things. The two criteria that are most commonly used in deciding whether or not something is common knowledge relate to quantity. The fact can be found in numerous places. It is likely to be known by a lot of people. Ideally, both conditions are true. A third criteria that is sometimes used is whether the information can be found easily in a general reference source. Use that as you're helping go through and understanding what common knowledge is. So let's talk about your reference page. When you are writing your paper and you get to the end, you have your reference page. And that is showing the audience or your reader everything that you used to cite or paraphrase or summarize in your paper. So as they are reading through your paper, they should easily be able to find multiple citations throughout your paper and throughout your essay. You need to be giving credit as you go. So remember that credit can be given within the text in two different ways. The first is a parenthetical citation, and the example I have for you here is Smith 2021. I've put it in parentheses and I've properly cited it for APA. That goes at the end of the sentence, after my direct quote, after my paraphrase, or after my summary. Or I can do a signal phrase reference, and this is where I put within my writing where I'm getting the information. So I might say, according to Smith, and then go into my paraphrase. So as your audience reads, they should be able to see multiple of these throughout the paper because you are giving in-text citations as you go. So at the end, when I'm looking at, as your reader, I'm looking at the reference page and I see a bunch of items. I see articles, essays, books, websites, videos, all of those things on the reference page. I should see them within your paper. So each reference item or each item on your reference page needs to have a citation, either a parenthetical citation or a signal phrase citation in your paper. If you have items on your reference list that do not appear within your writing, then you have most likely accidentally plagiarized. You can't just have an article that you read at some point that kind of helped you get some ideas and thoughts into your paper. How did you use them? Why is it there? So you need to review all of your sources on that reference page and make sure that you properly have cited them. If they're not, you have to ask yourself why they're there. Did you maybe paraphrase or summarize? And you need to go back and find that. But that's a good way to check for accidental plagiarism. Why did I put this on my reference page? Did I end up not using it? If I didn't use it, I need to take it out of there. If I did use it, then I need to go back in and make sure that the citation is correct. So this is an editing portion of your paper that is very important. You need to make sure you're checking for plagiarism as you are writing. And very interesting, I like to always put this in here, is the discussion of self-plagiarism. Most students get confused on what self-plagiarism is. If you've written it, then it's yours, right? And you shouldn't have to cite it. That isn't always the case. Self-plagiarism means when you're reusing work that you've previously published, submitted, or turned in. So if you wrote a paper for English 1101 and then you go in and turn that in for English 1102, you are self-plagiarizing. Regardless that it is already your work, you are self-plagiarizing if you are presenting writing as a new document when you've already received credit for it. So that's an example of cheating and self-plagiarizing. So you want to make sure you're not doing that. So let's talk about the video assignment that I want you to complete. There are two parts. Part 1, I want you to practice summarizing and paraphrasing for me. On the next slide, you are going to find a paragraph that I have pulled from this source that I have below by Ballero and Wagner called Body Image in the Media. And I want you to write a summary with paraphrasing of this paragraph and use the correct citations. So I want you to work on putting up this into paraphrasing and direct quoting where needed, and so you can summarize this particular paragraph for me. So the paragraph that starts, while many factors can influence an individual's perception of their own appearance. So this paragraph right here. Part 2 of your assignment is I want you to answer the following questions from the information that you got from this video. What's the difference between intentional and accidental plagiarism? I want you to give me an example of accidental plagiarism in ways that we can accidentally plagiarize in our papers. And number 3, what is one way you can double check to see if you have cited all your sources within your paper or that you've used the in-text citations correctly in your paper?